Welcome to the Samuele Tini Show, where business, innovation and sustainability converge to drive progress. Are you ready to uncover solutions shaping our future? Let's dive in.
Welcome to a new episode. And today on the show, we are going to discuss something that might be strange, but is a wonderful opportunity for regeneration and circularity. The black soldier flies. And we do it with a startup, an emerging startup that is working in East Africa. So we are going back to the future markets and that we are dear to our heart. So I'm pleased to have here today Tommie Hooft, who is the CEO and co-founder of Proteen. Thank you so much, Tommie, for being here with us today.
Samuel, thanks so much. I'm very excited.
And we want to know your journey, as the founder, Proteen and other. But before that, who is Tommie? How you have moved from Netherlands now to East Africa?
Yeah, okay. So the origin, I would say I was very privileged to grow up in many countries. So I actually grew up in Nigeria, and my father, through his work, he brought us to many different places. So we started in Nigeria, and I lived there until I was 10. And then we moved to Russia and Netherlands and Dubai. And then eventually I first studied civil engineering, then I switched to business, and then I did my master's in food and agribusiness management in France and in Brazil. And so, yeah, from the Netherlands, background in food and agribusiness. And I would say that the origins, moving to the origins of the company, which is also, I think, the origins of myself. It's been my first company. It's my only work that I know. It was right after my bachelor studies in Rotterdam. We had the bold idea, it was with my ex-partner at the time. We had the bold idea to pitch ourselves to the largest coffee company in the world, JDE Peet's, Jacobs Douwe Egberts. And we pitched to JDE that their website we said it very diplomatically, but what it came down to the fact that they had made a lot of claims about farmers and we didn't see anything on the website. So we made a really nice email. We constructed it, and we basically said, like, you guys are pitching something and we can't see it. We're gonna be your help to pitch this project. So 11 days later, we got the email reply. We actually we guessed the email of the CEO. So we sent many emails and guessed the name of the CEO. So 11 days later, we got a reply, and then we were invited to the Amsterdam headquarters. And funnily enough, we weren't sent to the marketing department. We were sent to the public affairs department. So it was a public affairs project.
Wow.
We pitched. And I had some background in photography, but we bluffed super hard and we said, we're going to make a documentary. So JDE, they loved it. And they said, guys, we're sending you to Uganda to make a documentary. So that was at the end of 2017, that was our first job. And in order to not be liable to JDE, we had to set up a company. So it was never the plan to be an entrepreneur, but it had to happen. And because of JDE, we got the opportunity to be in Uganda, and we've been working with JDE ever since.
Fantastic. You can see, and thank you for sharing the entrepreneurial journey, sometimes with a bunch of courage and getting out of the comfort zone. And then the journey went well, because from 2017 now is almost a decade that you are making strides in East Africa. From Uganda now, I think you are going to Kenya and Rwanda and moving on with your entrepreneurial journey. So a quite successful one. So you decided to work with BSF, so Black Soldier Fly. So for the people that they are listening, and some people are not be familiar, can you explain, not technically, but just in a simple way, in a lay way, what is the Black Soldier Fly? Why so important?
No, it's a good question. I always forget that not everyone talks about the Black Soldier Fly every day. Because when you mention Black Soldier Fly and BSF every day, you assume the world knows about it. It has gotten much, much more popular. Basically, the first company to commercialize Black Soldier Fly was in 2010. So it's a very young industry. Black soldier fly, it's particularly the larva of the fly, the black soldier fly larva. They're very good in the insect world at consuming and digesting organic waste. So it doesn't have to be rotting waste. That's another advantage. So a lot of fruit peels, vegetable peels, agricultural byproducts, black soldier fly larvae are really good at digesting them quickly. So within a period of 8 days, these really small larvae grow, 600%. and they fatten up in only a period of 8 days. And as they eat the waste, they digest it, they poop it out, and then the poop of the larva is a manure. It's a great fertilizer, and the larva itself is used as an animal feed product usually. So the black soldier fly has really taken over the insect industry it started as an alternative protein, and we as well call ourselves Proteen because we wanted to be part of the alternative proteins. But really, at its core, it's a waste management insect.
So it's a let's say a nature-based solution for circularity and to tackle waste. So waste. Sorry. So it's something. It's an animal that it's really a small one. I've seen in some farms and others, but it's a wonderful ally for us in the circular, especially for the organic. And the realization that the potential of BSF, the circularity, made you create Proteen. So can you explain to us what are you dealing with Proteen? What is the objective, the mission for your company?
Yeah, perfect. So as I mentioned, we made the documentary in 2017 through 2018, and we kept going back and forth between Amsterdam and Uganda and pitching and pitching and pitching. And we were working for JDE we wanted to make JDE a more sustainable company. We wanted to help their projects in Uganda. And of course, to do that, you're working with smallholder coffee farmers. So the origin of Proteen is that we saw black soldier fly larvae as an alternative income for smallholder coffee farmers. So they have their coffee, and if they do a small scale production of black soldier fly, they can boost their income and generate additional income. That was the origin. And I happened to read an article on black soldier fly, and the moment I read the article, I was obsessed. So that was basically it wasn't my idea, of course, but the article and then the obsession and then the integration to coffee. So that was the origin of Proteen. And it has definitely changed over time. We're a much different company now than we are then, but always we've worked with coffee farmers and with black soldier fly, and that's been our base.
And which products do you produce? I mean, at the Proteen, which is your business model?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so for the business model of black soldier fly, I'll start there and then I'll talk about Proteen. So black soldier fly company, what they do is they take organic waste. It could be municipal city waste. That's also where our origins came in. So you take waste from food markets. You can take waste, for example, from spent grain from the breweries. You can take waste from avocado oil or coffee pulp. You bring it to your factory. You blend it. You feed it to your larva. They eat for 8 days. And then you do the process, and then you have your products. So the business model of the black soldier fly company, they take in waste. Sometimes you get paid for it, but often in East Africa you don't. So there's a cost to bring in the waste, transport cost, logistics, handling. You have the waste, you feed it to your larva. Then the larva, you have two products. You have your larva, which is your animal feed, and the larva manure, the larva poo. So that's the original business case. You sell two products, animal feed and fertilizer. Now at Proteen, what we did is we combine these two. So usually the larvae, they eat the waste, they fatten up, and you separate the larvae from their manure, right? You literally sieve them out. What we decided to do, because I'll say first, what we decided to do is instead of separating the larvae from the manure, we compost, it sounds bad, but we terminate the larvae inside their own manure. So they become part of the fertilizer. And so the advantage here is that you don't have to separate. So separation at large scale is difficult. And then also what's difficult with the animal feed sector, but we can get to that later maybe, to fall back. Proteen's business model is 100% focused on the production and sales of fertilizer using black soldier fly manure and the larva itself. So the larva itself is inside our fertilizer. Yeah.
So if I understood correctly, it's not the traditional model of BSF where the larva is separated, given to chicken or others, but you are working towards more an organic fertilizer. So how do you see this difference? Because it's quite different from other companies that also someday came also to the podcast to discuss. So why you decided fertilizer, and which is the benefit of these organic fertilizers versus and the qualities?
Okay, so good question. So the first part of the question is why. The first part of the question is why do we focus on fertilizer?
Why you change? Why you differentiate the model?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So if you look at the black soldier fly industry, you have to look at two parts. One is the processing, and second is the market. So if you first look at the processing of how to generate the product, how to get the black soldier fly larva, you take your waste, you have to fatten up your larva. Now, larva is like any livestock. You have to have a good diet to make sure that they grow fast and that they grow fast and fat, so that you can sell them with a high protein and fat content. In order to make a diet, you have to formulate your diet. So you have to make sure that the nutrients that you intake is well balanced. So, for example, you can't just use coffee pulp because it doesn't have enough nutrition. So you have to mix coffee pulp with market waste, with brewery waste, maybe with some maize. So you start formulating a diet so that your larvae get fat enough so that they can eat within, the 7 or 8 days strictly. So that's one part of it. So instead of becoming a waste company, you're becoming a diet formulation company using waste. And you see this in Europe. It's hard to find actual negative waste streams. They use agricultural byproducts, which could be fed to pigs directly anyways. A negative waste stream is really a waste stream that can't be used for anything else and really goes to the landfill. So then once you've fattened up your larvae, you need to separate them. In order to separate the larvae from their manure, you have to make sure that the substrate that you use, the feed stock that you've been using, the diet, is dry enough so you can separate it. So then you have another challenge there, the moisture content of your substrate. And then the third challenge is that once you have your larvae, you need to dry them. And larvae, they have an exoskeleton. And the exoskeleton I'll come back to later, but the exoskeleton deters drying. The larvae are made to withstand. So it takes quite a lot of energy to dry the larvae. And then lastly, we look at the market. So the market in East Africa for animal feed relies heavily on soya import, on local maize production, local soya production, and local fish feed from Lake Victoria. So the small, tiny fish, the omena, the mukene. So you're competing in these markets, and it's very hard to get a price above $1,100 per ton for your feed. And often the costs are around $1,500–1,600 per ton to produce the feed. So the protein from BSF is a premium product, but the market doesn't need premium. The market needs a good enough product.
And that's why you pivoted towards being a waste company. I mean, this is a very strong case, a very economic one. So you pivot to be like a waste company and focus only on the fertilizer. Which are the advantages of fertilizer?
Yeah, exactly. I think this was definitely the instigating factor for us, the frustration of the animal feed and the frustration of using the waste. And actually it was a funny moment. I mentioned the history we have with coffee and JDE, and we've always wanted to use coffee pulp in our process. But coffee pulp has low nutritional value. So we would take coffee pulp, we would feed it to the larva, and they just wouldn't get fat enough fast enough. So one day we decided, out of frustration, we said, you know what? Screw it. We're just going to terminate the larva inside the frass and see what happens. And that was brilliant because the larva, they grow enough and they digest enough of the coffee pulp, because all you want for the larva is that they transform the waste into fertilizer. And how they do that is they digest the waste. It goes through their enzymes. The enzymes pre-digest for bacteria. The bacteria then have more opportunity to proliferate and decompose. So if you look at frass, which is the larva manure, it takes only 26 to 28 days to produce, which is much faster than composting. Composting is 4 to 5 months, or vermicomposting with earthworms, also 4 to 5 months. So that's the first advantage, that you can use a monostream of waste. So we can use 100% coffee, 100% avocado oil, 100% of any other waste. That's the first main advantage. And because you can use 100% of one waste, you can locate as close as possible to that waste source. In our case, we're even on site. So you also reduce the transport of waste. You can use a monostream, that's one. Secondly is the larva itself have a lot of benefits as a fertilizer. So when we talk about black soldier fly larva, I mentioned already the exoskeleton. The exoskeleton of the larva is a superpower. So the exoskeleton of the larva contains chitin. Now, in the black soldier fly word, chitin is really important. Everyone talks about chitin. Chitin is a biopolymer. It can be used in, for example, the production of microchips. It's important, or in pharmaceuticals. most of the chitin that we get from the world today is found in crustaceans like shrimps or in mushrooms. So chitin is a very valuable resource, and chitin has many symbiotic and beneficial effects on soil, primarily that it helps with nitrogen uptake. And also, chitin is found in the cell walls of fungus, of mushrooms. And if you want your plant to grow healthy, you have to promote your fungal activity. So by maximizing the amount of chitin in your fertilizer, in our case, we do that by terminating the larva inside, you boost your fungus, and by boosting your fungus, you feed your plant.
So it's a double savings, because just to see, how do you manage to close the system? It's just the air you put them. So just to understand, because usually with the BSF farm I've seen, they made the larva crawling and then they were collecting. I've seen the buckets and things. So just out of curiosity.
Honestly, we're basically a composting company. So we're a fertilizer company that uses composting methods, and our tool that makes us unique is black soldier fly. So everything that you see in composting, we do the same. So we have greenhouses, we have a thick layer of waste, we add the larva. Then in order to suffocate, to compost the larva, we pile it up, put it under a big
And
plastic
then it
sheets.
becomes together as as soil.
Exactly, compost.
Just to ask that, because we spoke about regenerative agriculture and the importance of soil. Have you tested, I mean, compared to traditional fertilizer, which are expensive, which usually for Kenya, they have been imported from Russia and Ukraine. And I have witnessed firsthand when the conflict started, our prices have skyrocketed to the moon and others. So instead, or some also of these chemicals come from fossil fuels, very polluting. So how FRAS from BSF can be not only a win to get the organic waste, but also something for the soils. So have you got any hard evidence that FRAS is better than the traditional one?
Okay, so I mean, the first hard evidence, we've been doing a lot of trials on coffee, Robusta and Arabica, and compared to our chemical fertilizer counterparts, which is our main competition, because there isn't much organic fertilizer, or you compete against manure, or you compete against not using anything. So funnily enough, no use of fertilizer is one of our biggest competitors. But hard evidence, depending on the type of soil, the type of chemical fertilizer they use, how they apply it, et cetera, we have between 30 and 80% more yield compared to chemical fertilizers. And that's based on evidence from Uganda on the Robusta and Arabica.
Oh, fantastic! So that's a lot. And price wise, is this methodology making the product competitive compared to the traditional fertilizer?
Yeah, that's the greatest point. Like it's as farmers, they always ask about yield and yield per acre, yield per hectare, but the most important is the gross profit, or the profit per hectare. So you can have a great product that increases yield, but if it's too expensive, it doesn't matter. So in some cases, we're cheaper than chemical because our application rate is higher. In most cases, we're on par, and that's the reality. Already being on par is amazing, because in our case, you don't have to, with chemical fertilizer, as you know, you have to increase the amount you apply each year. A lot of it gets washed away, and with organic fertilizer, you can slowly decrease the amount each year. So over time, you're going to be more profitable. And now what we're doing, I would like to add, is we are blending our fertilizer with organominerals. So we have one purely organic product. So we add rock phosphate and kieserite, and we also add biochar to our product. And then we have one blend has a 5% ammonium sulfate. So that is the chemical version, but it's only 5%, and that product is about 20% cheaper than the chemical varieties. And we believe it's because, if I can, a little bit more about the efficiency of the fertilizer. So one of the most important factors is to look at the nutrient efficiency uptake. So you can add 25 25 25 NPK, but only about 20% of that actually gets absorbed by the plant. This is because a lot of it gets washed away when you apply it at the wrong time. The rains wash it away. The pH of the soil makes the nutrients lock up, so they can't be used. So you have a lot of locked up nutrients. And what organic matter does, especially with chitin that we have, it unlocks available nutrients. And organic fertilizer doesn't get washed away. It seeps into the ground. So you can't apply it at the wrong time. You can't apply it in the wrong, area around your plant. So we're seeing a huge nutrient efficiency uptake in Ugandan soils and also in the Rwandan soils where we're testing. And we believe that, from a regenerative agriculture perspective, there's nothing wrong necessarily with chemical fertilizer, but like most things, it's how you apply it, the obsession of it, and the overconsumption of it.
No, and I think also price-wise, looking at the social benefits, having cheaper cost will put more income towards farmer. And
Yeah.
it's such an important part. And now I want to go a bit higher and asking about what we ask many of our founders and change makers, especially in our future market, the grow market here. So now you have in Uganda your operation now, Kenya starting soon, Rwanda as well. So which lessons have you learned from your entrepreneurial journey as a startup founder? Which are the challenges and opportunities you have faced, especially being on these new markets, and how you have navigated them?
When we talk about challenges and opportunities, there's a whole book or audio book. Okay, the first thing I'll talk about, the first challenge that's come to mind that is actually quite prominent now and also in the, let's say, the global world, is the use of development financing. So as a startup, we were very reliant on donor funding, and we still are to a certain extent, but less. And of course, now with USAID pulling out and also some European development financing pulling out, it's been very sudden. And in the short term, it's causing problems. I do believe in the long term, it's going to be beneficial. It's also affected our company a lot in the short term because you get, there's less cash opportunities, but it is changing the mindset. So I'd say the first challenge that we had is, even though we were a for-profit social enterprise, registered for profit, because of all of the donor funding that we received and the donor funding, they have good intentions or execution. And the good intention is they want to, for example, we had a project where we had to train 7,000 young farmers, right? And then the training and the use of fertilizer and the increase in yield counted as a job. Yes, it kind of does, right? But what you actually want to do is you want to create an industry that produces fertilizer, that employs people, that year over year can bring out fertilizer. So I'd say the first challenge was trying to unstick ourselves from the mindset of the NGO development financing, even though I'm extremely grateful and we needed it and it's needed. The separation between the financing and the mindset, that's the first challenge.
And now, how you have solved that? Have you gone for private equity, impact investing? You have gone for seed capital, and there, how you have navigated also that transition?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. So the solution for us indeed has been the classic route. So we did a lot of NGO financing, a lot of Dutch government financing, which again, extremely grateful for. Partially it was grants and also soft loans. JDE has been our best support. I would say JDE is the most liberal grant funding that we've received, very hands off. And we are now transitioning to private equity. So we've taken on private equity investment, which it's a private equity company. They are definitely impact focused, and that will allow us to really expand into Kenya. We're already in Rwanda and maintain what we have in Uganda.
And then how do you see, because one of the things that sometimes we discuss with other people, private equity, that sometimes founders in emerging market, in future markets, as we call us here in the show, you are required to maybe deliver 10 times what maybe startups in Europe are there. So it is there still a lot of bias towards those markets. Have you found also this in your journey?
Yeah, so I would say I think what you're trying to allude to is the risk return, the risk.
Exactly. So usually investors are more risk averse. So future markets are like, oh my, a black spot we don't understand, and so we won't really. We ask people sometimes the moon, while it's not that easy.
So we're very privileged that we have access to a lot of development financing, which, I mean, 90% of it came from outside of East Africa. Obviously, because of the fact that I think we're from the Netherlands, we have that privilege. And as you know, like, this is also a debate and a topic as a Mzungu, as a European founder. It is easier to access capital. Then there's a big missing middle. I think there's a lot more startup financing and very small financing. And then you have the big DFID, FMO, very large contracts. Yeah, the big tickets, but the middle is hard to raise 1 million is hard.
So that was the main issue. And if we can ask, which is the ticket for your, you are no longer a startup, but you are not the big one. So that's the missing middle that sometimes is not there, and that is where many startups in future market are stuck. So which is the ticket that you have, if you can say it?
Yeah, of course. No, we're starting with 1.2 million, and we can go up to 5 million. But for now, it's 1.2 million. So is indeed that missing middle, and it took a long time. Like, we've been trying to get this type of funding for the past 3 years. Of course, you have the argument: were you ready? Were you not ready? Point is, it took a long time to get it. And indeed, we are moving from startup to the next phase. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But then I want to ask you another thing to boost revenue streams, because now your revenue stream is based on that. And of course, grants may help, if you tackle the waste and, to help on transportation and others. But are you also tapping on the carbon markets to really make even more affordable your products?
Yeah. Okay. So for carbon, okay, I think that the carbon market should be used as a supplement. It should supplement your bottom line, and never to be dependent on it just because it's a very fluctuating financial market. In our case, we could have, we could have or should have gone for the composting credits. There, I think right now in the market is about $20 per ton. What we're looking into next is that our fertilizer uses biochar, so we put about 15% biochar in our product. Like, we see our product as a vehicle for biochar, and then we can share in the carbon credits, because biochar needs an organic base for it to be useful for soil. You can go up to 30-40%, but that's quite high for fertilizer. Ideally, it's around 20%. So we're looking for partners where we can be the vehicle for their biochar credits, and then we share the credits with ourselves and the farmers that use the product.
And that is, you see, also how revenue streams can be importantly and divided, from the traditional streams that has been eight, which is still there and helps a lot, especially to reduce capex at the beginning. And then from there, you move on. And if you have to summarize, I think I asked, but, to summarize the 3 lessons that you have learned since 2017, that you entered Uganda and now you are going East Africa, which would be to be shared?
Okay, the first lesson I would feel I would tell myself, or that I would share now, is that you will be in the same industry as many people for a long time. I would never have thought that 8 years ago I would be working with many of the same people now 8 years later, and that you see other companies evolve, you see their businesses pivot, they move maybe from one coffee company to the other coffee company, but you get to know each other, and that's really important. And I think when you're starting out, you just think about the start. You don't think that you might be here for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And now I've realized we're going to be here for 30, 40, 50 years, hopefully, and to work with those same people. That's one.
And a second one, maybe for somebody that wants to start a journey like yours, what would you suggest?
Maybe this goes against some podcasts. We all listen to podcasts, business podcasts, but like, I was in the beginning, we did go after the opportunities that were presented to us, and it made us a little bit scattered in the beginning. So we probably took on too much. We weren't as focused. We were always, in Uganda, black soldier fly, but we were trying many things. We tried with black soldier fly to make oil, to make feed, to do fertilizer for coffee, to work with coffee farmers, to set up small systems, large systems. to make pet food, to make pig feed, to make chicken feed, to do trainings. Just saying it like this, it's a lot, but every like we had to go through all of those learnings, because eventually when we pivoted and we made a big decision to go full fertilizer, we did that with the knowledge that we had tried before. And I think if we didn't try it ourselves and having that knowledge ourselves, we wouldn't have made the pivot. And I think many companies don't pivot like that, because I think the fear of feeling like they're stuck, or feeling like they haven't tried enough, or that sunk cost feeling. And we were just so enthusiastic. Like, I think put so much energy into an opportunity. And I think at the beginning, if JD told us, hey, we want you to look this way, we were like, okay, let's try. Or a grant came in. I think that's one of the good things about grants. Like, when you're inexperienced, the grant sets targets and you're like, okay, let's go for it. Now later, you can say, okay, it took you off course, but it also gave you a course. It did give you a course, and it's okay to, I think, deviate a little bit. And then eventually now we're stuck on a very small niche. And I think owning the niche is now the plan.
And then as a final question, where do you want to take Proteen in the next 5 or 10 years? What is your vision?
Perfect. Yeah. So within 3 years, we want to process 100,000 tons of waste a year. So that's within the next 3 years. So 100,000 tons sounds like a lot, but it's around 8,000 a month. Our first factory in Kenya, we recently bought 10 acres of land, and the first partner that we'll work with will provide us with 4,000 tons of waste. So we have until next year, June, to process 4,000 tons of waste just in Kenya. We're going to do 1,000 tons in Rwanda and about 700 tons in Uganda. So I think within 3 years, 100,000 tons is definitely possible. And then I would say our ambition is that regenerative fertilizer and regenerative practices becomes the norm, and that we bypass some of the mistakes that we made back home, or learn from them, and not go the same route of GMO seeds, chemical fertilizer on those seeds, insurance that's attached to those seeds. It's the system that we're used to, that we can make regenerative agriculture the norm.
And I can see a lot of things. I mean, being somebody that is at the forefront of regenerative agriculture, working circularity in coffee and things, I mean, for me, it has also been a pleasure to see that also the private sector is coming on board this and really transforming also how the food system production is done differently. And what I really like what you say, we should avoid, or we can say we should leapfrog whatever was done in the past in maybe in the global north, in Asia, and really craft from the start a regenerative model. So, Tommie, has been a pleasure and honor of you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing your lessons with us at the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Samuel.
Are you satisfied after this wonderful episode? Let's continue together our sustainability journey.